Hi, this is Elle Gardner with Empowerment Concepts Group, and today we're doing our VolunCheers segment, and I'm here with Dee Gordon, and she's part of the Hawa Project out of Liberia. We're going to talk to Dee a little bit about what it is she does for Liberia and for the Hawa Project. So, Dee, can you tell us a little bit, first off, give us a little bit of history about Liberia.
Okay, Liberia is a very primitive country on the continent of Africa. It's on the West African coast, and right now it's in the news a lot because it is where the Ebola breakout is presently being fought. Liberia had a 14-year civil war, which, if you can imagine any country that went through a prolonged civil war like that, the majority of their infrastructure was destroyed. Their power stations, their road systems, their sewer, everything was basically decimated through years and years and years of fighting, and people running from forest to forest, village to village, just running for their lives. So it's an area that has a lot of need, and a lot of need for improvement, a lot of need for infrastructure.
Okay, so tell us what it is that the Hawa Project is, first off.
Well, the name Hawa Project comes from Hawa, means hope in Pele. And Pele is one of the 23 dialects that are spoken in Liberia. And so hope meaning we as a group just want to bring hope to the people of Liberia. There's so much need there, and there's so many things that they have a want for, that we just want to bring something, just that little bit of enlightenment to the specifically women and children of Liberia.
Okay, so now tell us what specifically you do. What does the Hawa Project incorporate in Liberia?
Well, it started out, I was in Liberia and I was adopting a little boy, and so we were there for 7.5, 8 weeks, and so we had a lot of time to sit and think, and I met a lot of locals and a lot of people in the town that I was staying in. I stayed in a local's home, and so she introduced me to the people of her, it's not really a village, but it is a community. It's called the Coca-Cola Factory. And they kind of would bring up things that were a grave concern to them. And one of them that piqued my interest was that their maternal and fetal health system is woefully inadequate. And they are, of the top 10, I think they're number 5 in world in maternal and fetal mortality. And that impacted me because my career is a traditional midwife. And so hearing that, immediately my cogs started turning and thinking of what can we do? And I spent a lot of time talking to those in the healthcare industry saying, what is it that you need? What is it that would help and benefit your people? And specifically it was education for the women that were serving pregnant women, and they are traditional birth attendants, but also supplies, because they don't have anything. They don't have sphygmometers, they don't have Dopplers, they don't have fetoscopes, they don't even have gloves. So they usually show up to a birth empty-handed and try to manage a birth without any technology at all. And so we talked about how, to me, that seemed fairly simple. Let's outfit the women that are traditionally attending births with supplies that would help the outcome improve for not only the infant but also the mother. And then teach them how to use each of these tools, because these women have never taken a blood pressure before, and they don't understand what it means when you have an abnormal blood pressure. And so those two elements was really the only, we just wanted to focus in on what can we do to improve that aspect. And so we partnered with those clinicians that have contacts in the rural areas, because the rural areas are the areas that have the greatest need. And so we've just put together what we felt like was the most important tools for these women, and then we deliver them over there, and we spend some time educating them on how to use these tools and equipment.
So do you go over there yourself to educate these women?
Yeah, so I'm part of a group and basically a group leader, and I coordinate and work with any volunteers that are available. And one of the things I like to do is take any volunteer that wants to come, and then I interview them and find out what their strengths are. And if their strength is not in midwifery or not in maternal care, then we come up with something that they can do that is fine-tuned on their strengths. So we've had people that are horticulturists and master gardeners and all sorts of different volunteers that have kind of come out and said, what can I do? And I say, I absolutely have a project for you, because we want to grow the herbs and the medicinal plants that will help the women throughout their pregnancies and help them with complications in their pregnancies. So basically that's what I've just been doing, is I'm kind of like this hub of coordinating with the Liberian side, finding out, okay, this is the skill that we have. How can we put it to use when we come as a volunteer?
So you have a connection and you have a support group over in Liberia as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We have an amazing group of nurses that we have partnered with. They're called the Fellowship of Christian Nurses. And what these women do is they're nurses by profession, but their passion is just to help as much as they can. And most of the women, well, most of the medical professional, if they're not employed by their government, then they're volunteers. And so even if they work at the hospital, they may not be on the payroll. They may have to volunteer for 2 years before they ever get on a payroll. And so they come up with other things that they can do out in the community to either support their families or to use the skills that they've got to benefit their community. And so they own clinics, and clinics there are run by nurses rather than doctors. So the nurses are the ones that do the triage, they treat, they manage things. And then if it's something beyond their scope of care, then they refer them to a hospital or to a doctor.
Got it. Okay, so you recently did a pallet project. Can you tell us what that entails?
Yeah, it was pretty exciting, actually. I started to think about just the sheer need, and talking to my Liberian contacts, Marcia and Shirley specifically, they told me, they said, Dee, do you realize that the entire country of Liberia is out of gloves? And I said, you're fighting a massively contagious virus and you have no gloves. This is why they shut down the clinics. They could not take care of anybody. So if you had a migraine, or if you had a broken arm, or you had... the clinic was closed because they couldn't risk accepting a patient not knowing if they had been exposed to Ebola. And so I said, oh my gosh, this is unacceptable. So
right.
I made some phone calls and I said to some friends, I said, hey, this is what we're going to try to do. We want to put together a pallet of gloves. Let's send over, 2,000 pairs of gloves. And, it won't last very long, but it's going to be something. And through just opening my mouth and saying that, we had a group of doctors in Atlanta and a hospital and another charity based out of Atlanta came forward and volunteered to cover the expenses to get a 40-foot container full of medical supplies shipped over to Liberia. So the shipping alone was over $6,000.
Wow.
But then the container getting filled, I was
Right.
over 40 pallets worth of medical supplies. And I do not take credit for that at all. All I take credit for is being the person that knew who to send it to and knew how to receive it on the Liberian side.
Right.
But to me, that's just phenomenal. That all I had to do was really say, this is what I needed, and people just banded together and supplied. And we had people sending me a single box of gloves and sending an apology note. And I said, a single box of gloves is 100 patients that they can care for. Don't ever apologize. You just
Right.
helped 100 people. So it's pretty phenomenal, just the impact that we've been able to make with knowing that this container that left yesterday will arrive and we'll be able to hopefully open some of these clinics that have been shut down because they couldn't triage and take care of any of the patients.
Right. Wow, that's amazing. So tell me what it is that generally with midwifery you specifically need for your Liberian clients, or for the helping in the Liberia clinics.
So what we do is basically we put together a kit of the basic tools that the women would need. And that all total is maybe $100, and it's not very much.
Yeah.
But we end up paying $300 to train the midwives. For transportation, we have to pay their transportation plus our transportation, and then we feed them for the 2 or 3 days that we are having these training seminars, because these women have no resources. So
Right.
they're coming from far, far away on taxis and motor cars, and they're coming into the hospital or the clinic that we're training at. And we can't expect them to not only cover their own expenses to get there, but then cover the food that they would need to be,
Right.
available while they're there. And so each training is about $300 to $500 for us to put on. And like I said, we go into the rural areas and we have contacts there that spread the word and say, on this day, the Hawa Project will be there, partnershiping with the Fellowship of Christian Nurses, and we will train as many women as that want to come and get that training. And at the end of that training, they are able to take that equipment back to their village or their the area that they live in and service these women.
Okay. So during this crisis then, how can people help? How do we donate? How do we get involved?
Well, the thing that I found is the most impactful is just opening your mouth in support of the Liberians. There's a lot of people that say, oh, we have our own problems here in the U.S., and I don't discount that at all. But you and I can go to pretty much any church on the corner and go get a meal for our family for that night.
Right.
We have government funding, and we have churches that are well established and have the resources to help us here in the U.S. In Liberia, there's just nothing like that. And so the opening your mouth and being more supportive of their need is one thing that kind of changes the hearts of people and helps them realize that they're not just lazy no-gooders that just sit back and want welfare.
Right.
These are people that truly want to benefit themselves and change the history and change their children's future. And so saying, giving a voice of approval and a voice of support to the Liberians is a really, really big thing. And the second thing is, any kind of donation is helpful. We prefer taking money and buying the supplies over there that we can.
Okay. So
when we put together kits for the newborns and we put together soap and diapers and wipes and onesies, we can buy those in the market. And they're comparable in price of what we could buy here.
Okay.
Things that we can't buy there, like the sphygmometers and the Dopplers and the fetoscopes, things that are, actual medical equipment, we have a supplier here that sells it to us at cost, and then we purchase those and put them in our suitcases and carry them over ourselves. That's something, if you wanted to donate, it's $100 to supply one midwife with all the equipment that she needs to care for these women in the rural areas. So that's a good start. And the next thing is just the donations to get these more clinical outreaches available. So each of our volunteers pay for their own way. They pay for their airfare and they pay for their own housing and their own food while they're in Liberia. Mm-hmm. So the money that we collect isn't going to get our volunteers there. It's going to supply that training opportunity for the women in Liberia.
Okay. And so with the outbreak of Ebola, I know that you did have a trip scheduled in August that had to be canceled. Is that just kind of on hold at this time, which is why the pallet project got bumped up, I guess you could say?
It was basically, if I had $1,000 to spend on airfare, or I had $1,000 to spend on gloves, which was more important. And truly, it was more important for us to send gloves over there than it was for me to be over there teaching and training. And so that's where we refocused our attention, and we just said, this is an emergent need, and it has to be taken care of right now. And our nurses understand that, and they embrace that. They appreciate that. So all of the resources that we have just been pooled to getting them the supplies. And yes, our trips are on hold for now until it's safe for our volunteers to be over there. When you're in the medical field, there's no way I can say to anybody, I can look them in the eye and promise them they're not going to be exposed to somebody that has been exposed to Ebola when you're working in a clinic. It's just not the truth.
Right.
And so right now it's best if we rally our support from here and send over what we can. We do have in the works a possible second 40-foot container that may be funded. So we definitely have room for more supplies if people want to send them.
Okay. So tell everyone out there how it is that we can donate. How can the everyday Joe donate? Do you have a website? Do you have, how can we get you stuff?
We do have a website, and it's thehawaproject.org. And on the top of the page, there will be a link that says donate. And it's basically like any donation. It just goes through. And if you want to earmark yours for something specific, you say you really want to make sure that this money buys a stethoscope, then you can tag a note along with that, and we will make sure that that's where that money goes. We try really hard to respect that the money that comes in from our donors was a sacrifice, that nobody is just giving an abundance, oh, this is an extra $300 I'm going to send. We don't ever assume that. And so we know that people want their money to go through something specific.
Right.
And so we try to honor that. We try to respect that.
All right, Dee, so why don't you tell us, how can people find you? Online, social media? Why don't you let us know? And can you spell the Hawa Project for us so that we know where to go specifically?
Sure. We do have a website. It's the Hawa Project. Hawa is Hawa. So it's thehawaproject.org. And we also have a Facebook page, and you just type in the Hawa Project, and you should be able to connect with us there. And we do keep the Facebook page pretty updated when things change and happen.
Okay, great. So there you have it. This is so crucial for Liberia. So if you can volunteer and be one of our volunteers through the Hawa Project, they would love that. So you can find them. Again, it was thehawaproject.org. They are on Facebook at the Hawa Project. So go ahead and look Dee up. She'd be happy to give you information and let you know how to volunteer. If you want to nominate someone for a volunteer segment, please email us at info@ellegardner.com. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.